Okay, so we're back with our digital history lesson. We were studying World War II, and we're going to go on with World War II because World War II was a two-theater war. A lot of people, they know that, but nobody really appreciates that. For some reason, Germany and the Nazi Party and the war in Europe and honestly, VE Day, it gets all the glory and it gets all the press. But there was also a war in the Pacific against, in some ways, a nastier foe, a far less conventional enemy. And and nobody ever talks about VJ Day. In fact, most people have no idea when it is, or I would say a small contingent of, especially your aged kids, they have no idea maybe even what that is. So and it's funny because it wasn't Hitler that pulled the United States into World War II. It was actually the Japanese that did that, and of course they did that with
Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor. Thank you. Please raise your hand. I have such trouble with that with homeschoolers, especially when they're mine. This is the event that pulled us into World War II. The date. Anybody? The date that day that shall live in infamy. Which one was it?
December 7th? I don't know.
Oh,
40?
oh, close.
1?
41. Remember, everybody. 1441. World War I, World War II. Okay, 1441. Very easy to remember. The Japanese, they didn't really want to fight us. They really didn't want to pull us into the war, but they knew that there was one navy that could stop what they were planning to do. So they basically pulled one of the bigger sneak attacks in modern history, and they clandestinely bombed Pearl Harbor, the naval station there in Oahu, and they got us. They got us. Don't ever doubt it. They could have got us even better than they did, but they got us. They got us pretty good. Their mission was a success. Let's see here. They trained actually for a year to do this because the port at Pearl Harbor is only 45 feet deep. So they had to actually modify their torpedoes so that it would work. So they used, they had to actually train to attack a port that shallow. They attacked with 6 aircraft carriers and 420 aircraft. It was a major operation. They used torpedoes, bombs. They flew just 50 feet above the surface of this harbor to be able to strafe the decks head on with machine gun fire to kill anyone who would come above deck. Hopefully to be able to keep everybody down in the boats so they could blow up the boats and kill everyone there. This attack, when you watch it in movies, and I know it's been in several movies and a couple of good ones, the attack lasted not 15 minutes or 12 minutes or whatever they show in the movie. The attack lasted 2 hours. It actually came in 2 separate waves into Pearl Harbor. We thought it was over, and really they were just getting started. The USS Arizona, that's where the big memorial is now, was hit by several bombs and burned. It sank with 1,100 U.S. servicemen on board. We lost 1,100 people on one boat. We actually fought back for it being a complete surprise. We fought back, and we fought back hard. We expended 284,000 rounds back at them. Of course, it was just small arms and machine gun fire against bombs and torpedoes and mechanized aircraft fire. But it was a pretty lopsided attack. We got 29 aircraft. We knocked out 5 submarines, small ones, and we killed 129 attackers known and took actually 1 prisoner. We actually took 1 prisoner in the attack. They killed 2,403 of our soldiers and civilians, and also with an additional 1,178 injured. They destroyed 6 U.S. ships, some of them fairly large. They destroyed 169 of our aircraft. It's never usually taught, but actually the day after Pearl Harbor, the U.S. air bases in the Philippines, Guam, and Wake Island were attacked the very next day. And that would add casualties and damage as well. Okay, so I mean, we always talk about Pearl Harbor, but actually 4 of our bases were hit in 2 days. So we started this campaign of island hopping literally around the Pacific, making our way towards Japan, where we plan to invade the mainland. 50,000 Purple Hearts were made up for the main invasion. We figured we'd lose at least 50,000 soldiers to do that, and instead we used Plan B. Plan B, part of which was made right over here in, let's see which way I'm pointing, right over here in above Knoxville, in a little place called Oak Ridge, Tennessee, where a ball of uranium about the size of a volleyball maybe had been made in the last several years before and purified so that it could be made into the
Atomic bomb.
Please raise our hands. Yes, the atomic bomb. Very good. Not one raised hand among us, regardless of age. Yes, we made the bomb. We dropped one bomb on Hiroshima. We dropped another bomb on Nagasaki. Neither one heavy civilian centers or cultural centers, both military industrial bases, by the way, where the war machine for the Japanese was being built. We did that. So it is estimated by dropping the atomic bombs, we saved at least 50,000 American lives, probably quite a bit more than that, given how many bombs we had to expend to get close to being able to reach Japan to do this. And that's a controversial decision. Should we have bombed Japan with the atomic bomb? Should we have attacked with mainland forces and conventional warfare? Here's the part about Japan that bothers me. We know about Germany and the Holocaust, and we're going to cover that. But just like VJ Day never gets any press, and the war in the Pacific, to me, never gets the press that the German war does. It is bothersome because honestly, in some ways, really, the Japanese were just, I mean, honestly, a horrible enemy, a terrible enemy, and a deadly, deadly foe. And the way to understand the Japanese, it's not really the kamikazes, although you think, okay, so they couldn't shoot their way in. They're going to actually smash their planes into everything and try to blow it up that way. And that if a kamikaze soldier would come back, not only would he be, put to death, but so would his family. And anyway, so you had no option. It was either, kill us or die trying, or maybe die anyway. That's not even deadly enough to look at the Japanese, okay, and really understand them. I'm going to show you how to understand them. All right, so let me start right here. I'm going to go ahead and pull up this iPad, and we're going to zoom in for some pics. I'm going to show you some Pearl Harbor pics first, okay? Here's some Pearl Harbor pics. He's going to zoom in there for me a little bit. All right, right there. Yeah, okay, he's going to show them that. That's the Arizona going down. It's just terrible. That would become there's another vantage point of a ship exploding. This is an aerial shot. This is basically it's hard to see it, I know, from that angle, but basically there are the little concentric circles in the water are actually torpedoes on their way in to those ships and on their way into the shore. Here's another shot from another thing, actually showing several Japanese planes, kind of swooping in, strafing, and trying to machine gun everybody. Let's see right here. Yes, wrecked stuff. Lots of that. Lots of wreckage. When it was done, you could walk around. I could fill a boat with that stuff. Boats laying on their sides in the water. Basically, crewmen, anybody that was left trying to get out, the aircraft that was smashed, like I say, many, many planes. And that's a good place to start with that. But the way to really understand the Japanese is not to look at what they did to us. It's to look at what they did to China before they came to us, because in 1937, the Japanese had already started their bid for world domination by invading, not us, but China. They invaded mainland China in a place called Nanking. And what's been recorded about that is called the Rape of Nanking or the Battle of Nanking. Well, most of the time, it's called the Rape of Nanking because it was not really a battle. It was not really a battle. They invaded. They came to Nanking. The Chinese government pulled back and basically left them have Nanking to kind of keep them busy. That, if you happened to live at Nanking at that time, that wasn't conducive to much. They thought they would. The Japanese thought they would conquer China in 3 months. You know, country the size of China when Japan is so small. It's amusing to me, but that is what they thought. And they said that, and they put that in print. And then they got bogged down here at Nanking. And they couldn't really advance. So the folks in Nanking had to suffer the wrath of the Japanese. The forces at Nanking, the capital, were well organized and led and could not stand up to the Japanese attack. In 4 days, the Japanese took the city with orders to kill every single person inside it. 90,000 soldiers, Chinese soldiers, surrendered at Nanking. Every last one of them was put to death by torture, execution, beheading contest, any way that they could think of to kill someone. And after they got rid of those 90,000, they started on the citizens there. And we'll get to those numbers in a minute. They were brutal. Women caught in the city, women from age 70 to age under 8, were hunted down and lined up and put into camps to be, and there's no easy way to say this, but this is war, and this is a U.S. history class, and not only that, it's a world history class, but it's a high school grade class. These women were raped literally to death. I wish I could come up with a nicer way to say that. These women were literally ravished until they died by the soldiers, which it was usually 8 to 1. 8 to 1, often 20 to 1 ratios for the soldiers. The unborn were literally torn from their mother's arms. Families were forced to commit the most detestable sins, you can figure that out, with themselves. They were literally buried alive as family soldiers standing around a pit, literally throwing shovels on entire families of struggling human beings until everybody stopped breathing because there was too much dirt on top of them. Let's see. Random killings occurred at any time for any reason at all. And I'm sorry, but the Germans, they only went after certain groups, you know, the gypsies and the homosexuals and the Jewish people and stuff like that. Not so with the Japanese. All you had to be was breathing and living anywhere around Nanking, and you were fair game. Shops were looted. The shops were actually filled with people after they were looted and set on fire. And they needed to do that because they were going to kill so many people so fast. This unabashed season of death and destruction went on for 6 weeks until literally 300,000 citizens were dead. Well, the city only ever had 600,000 people when they got there. But in addition to the soldiers, they killed at least 300,000 people, or at least 50,000 people a week for 6 weeks after the soldiers were dead and there was no defense left at all. So that will help you understand Pearl Harbor and the type of people that we were passing, because don't get me wrong, the Holocaust is horrible. The Holocaust is honestly one of the worst things in human history as far as I'm concerned. Just this organized, systematic elimination of a people out of no reason at all except just rank hatred. Let me see. The reason to study what happened, really, the Japanese, has nothing to do with the particular city of Nanking. It's to show the character of the enemy that the United States was facing in the Pacific. A lot of people say, "Oh man, we had to face Hitler and we had to face the Nazis." You might have been better off getting caught by them. I'll try to show you some pictures here, which are particularly lovely. And believe me, the worst of them, the bottom, probably 50% will not be here. All you have to do for a government or people to start killing people is simply to classify them as subhuman. as far as the Nazis were concerned, Jewish people had facial features and body features and characteristics that made them less than fully human. Well, guess how the Japanese classified the Chinese? Any guesses? Anyone?
Subhuman.
Subhuman. And as soon as you can make somebody subhuman, well, you can take the guilt out of killing them. And that doesn't matter whether they're black or Jewish or they're Aborigines or little colonial peoples in Africa that got in Britain's way or whatever it was. As soon as you can say they're not fully human, suddenly killing them, well, you're not killing a whole person. Certainly not killing a real person. I mean, you're kind of doing society a favor. Cleansing the gene pool, as they call it. Purification is what the Germans called it. The Japanese just said, we don't like you and we've got guns. So, you know, they really weren't worried about it. In Japanese, all you had to be in Japanese culture to not be worthy of life anymore was not to sacrifice your life for the emperor. If you ditched your plane before you kamikazed it, well, don't go home. We'd have treated you better. They'd have killed you. All right, a surviving kamikaze, soldier during the war would have been dead, and they would have been killed. Their family shunned or killed. I guess the takeaway here is that VE Day is celebrated openly, and defeating Hitler and the Nazis, which was wonderful and very, very important. And we talk about the Holocaust all the time, and we should, but yet somehow the Japanese and the Bataan Death March, or what they did to our soldiers in those swamps, or the ferocity of them in the Battle of the Midway, and all these other things. There are legendary stories about literally every island group we took with those people. They were so tenacious and hard to defeat, because there was one story where the Japanese got backed into a swamp full of alligators or crocodiles, can't remember, but alligators or crocodiles, can't remember. Didn't matter. They wouldn't surrender. Well, our soldiers had to sit there and listen to them literally being eaten alive all night long, because for them, they would rather be eaten by basically, wild animals than to come out and just surrender to U.S. forces, which would have allowed them rules under the Geneva Convention. But why? Because they couldn't go home. Defeated soldiers couldn't go back. Surrendered soldiers couldn't go back. So I guess you're just gator chow. The pictures that we have of what happened at Nanking, of what happened at the Bataan Death March, of what happened at that, they're well documented. People are like, well, wait, what do you mean? It's them actually doing it to Chinese soldiers, doing these things to women, doing these things to kids, doing these things to soldiers, U.S. soldiers, Australian soldiers, whoever they caught. We don't have that with the Nazis. Now, we have pictures of pits with people in them because we made them dig them up and expose that. And we have pictures of crematoriums that they blew up so that we couldn't document what they'd been doing. The Nazis tried to hide their war crimes, not the Japanese. Not the Japanese. In fact, the pictures we have, no undercover journalist took them, no super secret, someone smuggled a camera into a death camp or whatever. None of that. The Japanese took them. They took them. What we have are Japanese film of Japanese soldiers literally raping, killing, torturing, and slaughtering civilians, soldiers, and anyone else they could find. Literally anyone but each other. And who provided the pictures? They did. They did. And so I'm gonna go over it. If I'm gonna give you a warning, if you are willing to just take my word for it and you don't want to see the sort of things that the Japanese did, I'm gonna let you just stop the video. I will give you your homework assignment. Your homework assignment is to tell me why you think that what the Germans did is so much better presented and so much better known than what the Japanese did. And that's just your homework. Half a page, please. Please do a good job on this assignment. I haven't given you a writing assignment for a while, so I plan to grade these, kind of tougher. And so I want some work. And then we'll come back to that when we cover the Holocaust, which we're going to do soon. We'll go ahead and we're going to kind of compare and contrast, okay? But I wanted to actually present the Japanese side first, and I want you to remember that these pictures were provided by the perpetrators of the crimes. And these are crimes. They're war crimes, but they are crimes. These are civilians. These are unarmed people. These are people who just got caught up in the first city that the Japanese got stuck in. So I'm going to go over them, and anyone with just doesn't want to know, doesn't feel they need that part of history, you just tell me. Don't zoom in too far for me. I'm just going to, just what we need to get the pictures, okay? All right, ready? All right, this here on this side, we have a Japanese soldier, and he has a young Chinese woman in his arms, and he's kissing her, and there's nothing she can do about it. You'll notice her hands are behind her back. That is because they are tied. On the other side would be a Japanese officer about to behead a captured Chinese surrendered combatant with his samurai sword. All right, so here we go. This is a pile of heads. They had contests. The Japanese would have contests where two officers who were considered very strong and good swordsmen would line up captives and cut their heads off. But to win the contest, you could only swing once. If the head didn't come off with each swing, you didn't get to count that one, and you lost the contest. And literally, sometimes they would rack them up. You'll see that here. This is a man who is tied to a post, and he is a civilian. But he is being used to teach young Japanese soldiers how to bayonet people tied to a post who can't fight back and have their hands tied behind them because, well, that's good practice. And that's what he's doing. And they would literally do that until they got tired of moving the bodies. Okay, many kind of pictures like this. Who supplied these pictures? The Japanese officers did. Thank you, fellas. Hopefully they were. There's a man with his head. He has been decapitated, but his head has not fallen yet. Somebody just got the shot at the right time. This is a family being literally buried alive by the soldiers who will do that, and they will literally bury these people alive. They were made to commit atrocities with each other before being buried alive, but being buried alive was a popular, pastime here during these several weeks because they didn't have anything else to do. You know what I mean? And so they just buried people alive because it's slow and torturous and sadistic. And you can tell I didn't like the Imperial Japanese Army much. The bomb, it didn't bother me like it bothers some people. Here's a man, he did really well in his contest that day. They're all the heads that he managed to cut off, and he's posing with that like I might pose with a squirrel that I shot, or a deer that I used a bow and arrow on, or something like that, or fish that I caught. He's posing with all the nice Chinese severed heads he's collected that day. And like I said, I'm doing this because I want to show you that the Germans were not the only bad people we were fighting in World War II. The guys who fought in the Pacific Theater, they faced these animals. Okay, so that's why I'm trying to bring a little bit of publicity to that, because apparently no one else is going to. Here's a nice man. He's in the hospital, and he's not going to have to worry if his insurance is going to cover his next test, though, because this Japanese officer is about to shoot him through the head with his Nambu pistol because, well, just because, and because that's kind of foe that we're dealing with here, and not only would you do something like this, but you'd want it documented on film. All right, so yeah. Here is probably the worst of this. If you are sensitive, just simply turn away. This is a mother and child being beheaded at the exact same moment. The baby in her arms is being beheaded. She is being beheaded. And someone was thoughtful enough to supply this, a Japanese person, was thoughtful enough to supply this. As far as I'm concerned, worst image of Nanking. I cannot imagine. a young mother and her child at the same time. I'm sorry. I don't care what we did to the Japanese. It was fine. You know, and that's my just little opinion on that. Here is a child tied to a tree so he can't run away, in case, you know, he can run away with his feet tied together and his hands tied behind his back. But he's doing that, and of course he's about to be executed with a samurai sword too, because, well, after all, he's had what looks like, I'd say, 9 to 10 years to do terrible things against the Japanese government. And so they did that. So we did this. And a lot of people have a problem with this, and that's fine. That's why we're teaching this class. I'm looking forward to your opinions on it. Okay? But they did that, so we did this. They did that, so we did this. They started a war with a country not at war, at peace, without warning, and killed a whole lot of Americans because they thought we would be a threat to them if they did atrocities, which they did. They did that. We did this. And this. And this. This is the shadow of where a human being used to be before a thermite weapon, a heat weapon, froze their shadow into the ground where they had been. They are no longer there, but basically the shadow of where they were is, and those exist. Here's one. Somebody was about to go up the ladder, you know, and when it went off. And here's the one. This is the poster one. This is always the one there where we bombed. I think this is Nagasaki. That's a burned baby. Now, I don't have anything for burning babies or beheaded babies. And I know that war can be a terrible thing. But sometimes I wonder how the Japanese, if you ask me, sort of, kind of as far as history-wise, all but to the soldiers that were there, it almost seems like kind of got away with it. That they were able to do these things, these terrible things. Start a war unprovoked, and then wonder why someone would use an atomic bomb on them. I'm asking you straight. Do you really think if the Japanese had had the atomic bomb, they would have hesitated? We hesitated. We sent leaflets dropped from airplanes. We warned them what was about to happen. Not exactly what was about to happen, but something big was about to happen. And then we did not hit their capital. We could have. That atomic bomb could have been dropped right on the capital and took out everybody running the war. It would have been just as easy. But we didn't. We didn't do that. We dropped it on heavily militarized, industrialized cities, and then warned the people to get out of town before we did it. So, not a real easy lesson to teach, but one that I refuse to let go by, because it almost seems like because Japan is now our ally, that we don't like to talk about the fact that what they did. Well, I'm sorry. What happened is still what happened. And I'm glad things are better today, but I am not willing to let the Japanese, kind of slide here on the history part. We don't have any mercy for the Nazis. I don't see why we would have any less resolve to uncover the truth about Imperial Japan. Okay, so next week we will cover the Holocaust. I always cover it. I feel it's one of the most important lessons that we do, so please don't miss it. And don't forget your homework assignment. And Lord willing, I will see you next week. And by the way, to my class, I just want to tell you, I miss you very much. I do not like teaching you up here in my little lofty thing. I wish I was still standing in front of your class and looking at your bright smiling faces. And I want you guys to know I miss you very much. All right? So, and don't get coronavirus. I hear it's bad. All right? Thanks.